Stepmom erased her from the will, but never knew the hidden clause that changed everything. A story of betrayal, hidden justice, and the ultimate checkmate. The lawyer's words hung in the air like poison. To Ariadne Corleone, I leave the old stone shed and all contents therein. That was it. 32 years of being Sebastian von Trapp's daughter, reduced to a crumbling shack on the forgotten edge of the property. Ariadne sat perfectly still in the mahogany-paneled conference room, her hands folded in her lap, fingers white-knuckled beneath the table where no one could see them shake. Across from her, Miranda Deckard, her stepmother of 10 years, didn't even try to hide her smile. It was the kind of smile a predator wears when the prey finally stops running. The remainder of the estate, the lawyer continued, his voice professionally neutral, including all shares of Von Trapp Vineyards, the main house, the production facilities, liquid assets, investment portfolios, and all associated land holdings, totaling an estimated value of $47 million, I leave to my beloved wife, Miranda Deckard von Trapp. The room tilted slightly. Ariadne focused on breathing. Hey there, everyone, welcome back to the channel. Or if you're new here, welcome to a story about betrayal, hidden legacies, and the kind of revenge that's served colder than ice wine. I'm so glad you're here. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love hearing from you all around the world. And listen, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Hit that subscribe button because, trust me, you're going to want to see how this unfolds. This is the kind of story that proves karma doesn't just exist. Sometimes it's meticulously planned. Now, let's get back to it. Miranda stood, smoothing her Chanel suit with manicured hands. She didn't look at Ariadne. She didn't need to. The victory was total, absolute, and they both knew it. Thank you, Mr. Patterson, Miranda said, her voice honey-sweet and venomous. I know Sebastian would want his legacy protected by someone who actually understood business. The implication was a knife between the ribs. Asterisk, not you, Ariadne. Never you. Asterisk, Ariadne finally found her voice. He promised me. The words came out smaller than she intended. He told me I'd always have a place here. That the vineyard would. Your father made many promises in his final months. Miranda's tone was clinical now, surgical. The morphine made him sentimental. But he was lucid enough when he signed this will 6 weeks before he died. 3 witnesses. 2 doctors certified his mental competency. She tilted her head, almost sympathetic. Almost. You got the shed, darling. That's exactly what he thought you were worth. The lawyer cleared his throat uncomfortably. Ms. Corleone, you do have 30 days to contest. She won't. Miranda's eyes locked onto Ariadne's, cold as winter frost on grapevines. Because she knows I have documentation of every conversation, every decision. She knows that Sebastian chose me to run his life's work because I made it profitable. What did you do, Ariadne? You played in the cellar with dusty bottles and told romantic stories about terroir to tourists. It was true. All of it was true. Ariadne had never wanted the business side. She'd loved the wine itself, the history in every vintage, the stories in every label, the alchemy of soil and sun and time. While Miranda had quadrupled revenue and expanded distribution to 15 countries, Ariadne had cataloged her father's antique collection and led tastings that made people cry with the beauty of it all. You're right, Ariadne said quietly, standing. Her legs felt distant, disconnected. I never understood business like you did. The admission seemed to satisfy something in Miranda. Her posture relaxed minutely. The shed is yours. I'll have maintenance clear out the junk so you can... No. The word came out sharper than Ariadne intended. Nothing gets touched. The will says all contents therein. That means everything stays exactly as it is until I've gone through it myself. Miranda's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. It's mostly rotting furniture and mildew, Ariadne. And that ridiculous wine collection your father hoarded like a dragon. Bottles from the 1800s that are probably vinegar by now. Then you won't mind me taking my time with it. Something flickered across Miranda's face. Irritation, maybe, or calculation. But she nodded.
Fine.
Sentimentality is all you've ever had anyway. Might as well let you wallow in it. She gathered her purse, her files, her victory. I'll have the estate manager contact you about clearing out your things from the main house. You have until the end of the month. The end of the month. For weeks to pack up a lifetime. For weeks before she lost the only home she'd ever known. Ariadne walked out of that conference room with her spine straight and her face composed, the same way she'd learned to survive every family dinner where Miranda had subtly, expertly made her feel small. She made it to her car. She made it 3 miles down the winding road that cut through the Von Trapp vineyard property, acre after acre of perfect vines heavy with fruit she'd never taste again. Then she pulled over and let herself brake. The old stone shed sat on the northern boundary of the property, where the land sloped down toward the creek and the soil turned rocky and impossible to cultivate. It was built from river stone and rough timber, probably 150 years old, a relic from when the property had been a cattle ranch. Sebastian had claimed it as his private sanctuary 20 years ago, before Miranda, before the business became an empire. Ariadne hadn't been inside in years. The door stuck. The hinges screamed. The smell hit her first. Dust and old paper and something else. Something that made her throat close up. Her father's cologne, still haunting the air like a ghost. The main room was exactly as she remembered.
Cluttered. Chaotic.
Beautiful. Wooden crates lined every wall, stamped with names of wineries that no longer existed. Bottles nestled in straw, their labels faded to whispers. A massive oak desk dominated the center of the room, buried under notebooks, maps, and soil sample charts. This was where Sebastian Von Trapp had taught himself viticulture 40 years ago, before the money, before the fame. This was where he'd really lived. Ariadne ran her fingers over the desk's scarred surface and felt something crack open in her chest. Why? Why had he left her nothing but this? Had Miranda been right? Had the morphine and pain made him forget what he'd promised? Had he really decided, in the end, that Ariadne's love of beauty and history was worthless compared to Miranda's ruthless efficiency? She sank into his old chair, and that's when she saw it. An envelope. Cream-colored, expensive. Sitting in the exact center of the desk's only clear space, positioned with the kind of deliberate care that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Her name, in her father's handwriting, Ariadne. Her hands shook as she opened it. My darling girl, asterisk if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Miranda has done exactly what I knew she would do. She's taken everything, hasn't she? The house, the business, the money. She's made you feel small and sentimental and useless. Asterisk good. Ariadne's breath stopped. Asterisk, I needed her to take it all. I needed her to believe she'd won so completely that she'd never look twice at what I gave you. The shed isn't a consolation prize, my dear. It's a key. Asterisk, asterisk in the cellar, behind the third stone from the left on the eastern wall, you'll find what you need. Miranda thinks she understands power because she understands money. But you and I know that in wine country, there's only one thing that really matters. Asterisk water. Asterisk I'm sorry I couldn't tell you while I was alive. She was always watching, always listening. But I built you a way back, sweetheart. I built you a way to take everything she thinks she owns and make her beg for mercy. Asterisk, asterisk, trust yourself. Trust the law. And remember, revenge is a dish best served with a perfect vintage. Asterisk, all my love. Dad, the letter trembled in Ariadne's hands. Behind the third stone, eastern wall, cellar. She hadn't even known there was a cellar. What did Sebastian Von Trapp hide for his daughter? And what does water have to do with Miranda's empire? Asterisk, asterisk, drop your theories in the comments below. I want to hear what you think is behind that stone wall. And if you're loving this story so far, make sure you're subscribed. The trapdoor was hidden under a rotting Persian rug that had probably cost a fortune once. Now it was home to spiders and decades of dust. Ariadne pulled it open, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. Wooden stairs descended into darkness. She used her phone's flashlight, each step creaking under her weight like a warning. The cellar was smaller than she expected, maybe 12 feet square, with stone walls slick with moisture and the mineral smell of earth pressed close. More wine crates lined the walls, these older than the ones upstairs, labels written in French and Italian and languages she'd have to look up. Third stone from the left. Eastern wall. She counted, her fingers finding the edges. This one sat slightly different from the others, the mortar around it newer, cleaner. She dug her fingernails into the gaps and pulled. The stone slid out easily, as if it had been designed to. Behind it, a metal document box, sealed with wax. Ariadne lifted it out with shaking hands, carried it upstairs into the light, and broke the seal. Inside were 3 items: a leather-bound ledger, its pages covered in her father's meticulous handwriting. A legal document, thick with official seals and notary stamps, dated 15 years ago. And a photograph. Ariadne picked up the photograph first, her throat tightening. It was her at 7 years old, standing in the vineyard at sunset, her small hands holding a cluster of Cabernet grapes like a treasure. She was laughing at something off-camera, her father probably, making one of his terrible jokes. Her mother had died 3 years before this was taken. Ariadne barely remembered her anymore, just the smell of lavender and the sound of humming. This photo was from before Miranda, before everything changed. She set it down carefully and opened the ledger. The entries went back 40 years, to when Sebastian Von Trapp was 25 and bought the property with money he'd borrowed from anyone foolish enough to lend it. The early pages were full of optimism and desperation in equal measure. Soil tests, crop yields, failed experiments. He'd nearly lost everything twice in the first 5 years. But scattered through the entries were notes about something else. Water rights. Asterisk purchased underground aquifer access from Kincaid Ranch, $50,000. They think I'm insane. Maybe I am. But without water, everything else is just dirt. Asterisk filed incorporation papers for Clearwater Holdings, LLC. Separate from the vineyard business. My insurance policy if things go bad. Asterisk the aquifer under the northern section is bigger than we thought. Geologist says it could supply water for 10 times our current acreage. This is the real gold. Asterisk Ariadne's pulse quickened as she read further. Her father had understood, even back then, that in California wine country, water was more valuable than land. He'd quietly secured the rights to an underground aquifer through a separate holding company, something completely divorced from Von Trapp Vineyards. Over the years, as the vineyard expanded and water became scarcer, those rights became the invisible foundation that everything else was built on. And, according to the notes, no one knew. Not his business partners. Not the board. Not Miranda. The legal document confirmed it. It was a codicil, not to his will, but to the original articles of incorporation for Clearwater Holdings, LLC. The language was dense, obviously written by a lawyer who specialized in Byzantine complexity, but the core was simple enough. Asterisk in the event that Ariadne Von Trapp Corleone is dispossessed of more than 50% of the quantifiable value of the total Von Trapp estate through any will, trust, or testamentary instrument, ownership of the property designated as Northern Parcel, Old Stone Shed and associated structures shall immediately transfer from the Von Trapp Family Trust to Clearwater Holdings, LLC, thereby activating said company's right of first refusal over all water usage contracts currently servicing Von Trapp Vineyards and associated operations. Asterisk Ariadne. Read it 3 times, her mind spinning. Then she started to laugh. It came out strange and breathless, echoing in the empty shed. Her father had built a trap. A beautiful, legal, utterly ruthless trap. And Miranda had walked straight into it. By giving Ariadne only the shed, by erasing her from the inheritance so completely, Miranda had triggered the clause that transferred the property to the holding company. And according to the documents in the box, Ariadne was the sole shareholder of Clearwater Holdings LLC, a company that now owned the one thing Von Trapp Vineyards couldn't survive without: the water. Without it, the vines would die. The business would collapse. $47 million would become $47 million worth of dust. Ariadne sat in her father's chair as the sun moved across the floor, reading every page of the ledger, understanding for the first time the man her father had really been. Not the gentle, eccentric wine lover she remembered from childhood. Not the diminished, morphine-hazed invalid from his final months. But someone harder, smarter, more calculating than she'd ever imagined. Someone who'd loved her enough to build her a weapon and hide it where only she would find it. She thought about the last real conversation they'd had, 6 months before he died. They'd been in his bedroom at the main house. Miranda had been away in San Francisco meeting with distributors. Sebastian had been having a good day, alert, present, more himself than he'd been in weeks. "You never wanted the business," he'd said suddenly. "Did you, little bird?" The childhood nickname had made her smile.
No, Dad.
"I wanted the wine." Not the same thing.
No.
Not the same thing. He'd studied her for a long moment, his eyes still sharp despite the illness eating him from the inside. "You're like your mother that way." She understood beauty. Miranda understands profit. Different languages entirely. "Miranda's good at what she does," Ariadne had said, because it was true, and because some part of her was still trying to make peace with the woman who'd never wanted a stepdaughter. "She is," Sebastian had agreed. "But she doesn't love it. She loves winning." He'd reached for her hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "Promise me something, Ariadne. Promise me you'll never let anyone make you feel small for loving what you love. The world needs people who understand beauty. It has enough people who only understand price tags." She'd promised. She'd thought he was just being sentimental, the way dying people get. She hadn't understood he was preparing her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jamie Strode, her best friend and the only person who'd checked on her since the will reading 3 days ago. Asterisk, "How are you holding up? Want to grab dinner and trash talk your evil stepmother?" Asterisk, Ariadne smiled despite everything. Jamie was a litigation attorney in San Francisco, brilliant and fierce and loyal to a fault. They'd met in college, bonded over a shared love of old movies and expensive wine, and stayed close even when Ariadne had left the city to come back to the vineyard full-time. She texted back, "Asterisk, can you come to the property? I need a lawyer's eyes on something. And maybe bring wine. The really good stuff." Asterisk, the response came instantly. Asterisk, "That mysterious? I'm already in my car. Be there in 90 minutes. And babe, I'm bringing champagne. If we're doing this, we're doing it right." Asterisk, Ariadne set the phone down and looked around the shed, really looked at it for the first time since arriving. This wasn't a consolation prize. This wasn't a rejection. This was her father saying, "Asterisk, I see you. I trust you. And I'm giving you the power to choose." Asterisk, she could walk away. Sell her shares in Clearwater Holdings to Miranda for whatever price she could negotiate, take the money, and build a life somewhere else. Cut ties with the vineyard, with the memories, with all of it. Or she could stay and fight. The old Ariadne, the one who'd spent 10 years making herself smaller to avoid Miranda's cutting remarks, who'd accepted the role of the sentimental one because it was easier than conflict, would have taken the money. But that Ariadne had died in the lawyer's office when Miranda smiled over her total victory. This Ariadne, sitting in her father's shed with a weapon in her hands and rage in her heart, was someone new. She spent the next hour documenting everything. Photos of the documents, close-ups of the notary seals, pictures of the ledger entries. She texted them to herself, backed them up to 3 different cloud services, and emailed copies to Jamie with a subject line, "Insurance." Then she went through the wine collection. The crates held treasures that would make collectors weep: an 1870 Chateau Lafite, a pre-phylloxera Burgundy from a vineyard that no longer existed, Bottles from Napa's earliest days when California wine was still a beautiful joke. Her father had acquired them one at a time over decades, not as investments, but as pieces of history. Each bottle had a story. Each vintage captured a moment in time, preserved in glass. Miranda had called them junk. Vinegar. The woman had no idea what she was looking at. Ariadne found herself smiling as she cataloged each bottle, cross-referencing them with her mental database of wine history. This collection alone was worth at least $2 million, maybe more. But the value wasn't the point. The point was that her father had saved these stories, and now he'd given them to the only person who would understand what they meant. She was so absorbed in the work that she didn't hear the car pull up outside. The knock on the shed door made her jump. "Ariadne? You in there?" Not Jamie's voice.
Male.
Familiar in a way that made her stomach flutter with something she didn't want to examine too closely. She opened the door. Luca Babbitt stood on the threshold, 6 feet of lean muscle in dusty jeans and a work shirt, dark hair curling slightly in the evening humidity. He'd been Von Trapp Vineyard's head viticulturist for 3 years, a quiet, serious man who understood vines the way poets understood words. Ariadne had harbored an embarrassing crush on him for at least 2 of those years, carefully hidden behind professional politeness.
Luca. Hi.
"What are you doing here?" He held up a cardboard box. "Clearing out your office at the main house. Miranda's orders. I thought you'd want your personal stuff before she had someone just pitch it." The casual cruelty of it hit her like a slap. Miranda couldn't wait even 4 weeks. Thank you. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." His dark eyes met hers, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "The whole staff knows what she did, Ariadne. What happened with the will. It's not right. It's legal." Legal and right aren't the same thing. He set the box down just inside the door, his gaze moving past her to the bottles, the documents on the desk, the open cellar. "What is all this?" Ariadne made a decision in that moment. Maybe it was reckless. Maybe it was stupid. But Luca had always been kind to her, always treated her wine tours and historical presentations as valuable rather than frivolous. And if she was going to fight Miranda, she'd need allies who understood what was really at stake. "It's an inheritance," she said quietly. "The real one. Wanna see? If you're wondering where this is going, trust me, it gets so much better. Drop a comment and tell me. Do you think Ariadne should trust Luca? And what would you do if you were in her shoes?" Luca stood over the desk, reading her father's letter for the 3rd time. His jaw was tight, his hands braced on the scarred wood like he needed something solid to hold onto. "Jesus Christ," he whispered finally. "Sebastian planned this whole thing. 15 years ago, apparently." Ariadne handed him the codicil document. "Can you verify something for me? The water rights, how critical are they to the operation?" Luca looked up at her, and something in his expression sent a chill down her spine. "Critical?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Ariadne, without access to that aquifer, the vineyard has maybe 8 weeks of water reserves. 10 if we stop all irrigation immediately and pray for rain." He set the document down carefully, like it might explode. "The aquifer under the northern section is the only reason Von Trapp Vineyards survived the last drought. Miranda knows that. The whole management team knows that. But they don't know about Clearwater Holdings. No one does. I've worked here 3 years, and I've never heard that name." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Ariadne had seen him make 100 times when he was working through a problem. "Your father kept this completely separate from the business. The water contracts are probably buried in some legacy paperwork that Miranda's never looked at twice because they've always just worked. Until now." "Until now," he echoed. They stared at each other across the desk, the weight of what this meant settling over them like snow. "What are you going to do?" Luca asked quietly. Ariadne opened her mouth, closed it. The honest answer was that she had no idea. The vengeful answer, the one that burned hot and fierce in her chest, was to activate the clause immediately, cut off Miranda's water access, and watch her stepmother's empire crumble into dust. But that would destroy the vineyard too. The vines her father had spent 40 years cultivating. The legacy that was as much hers as it had ever been Miranda's, no matter what the will said. I don't know, she admitted. I don't want to destroy it, Luca. I just want justice? He moved around the desk, closer to her, his voice gentle. You want her to understand what she took from you? I want my father's real wishes honored. The words came out fierce, surprising her with their intensity. She manipulated him when he was dying. She isolated him, controlled who could see him, fed him God knows what story about me not caring enough to visit. We all saw it happening. Luca's voice went hard.
The staff.
Management. Everyone saw how she kept you away those last few months. How she scheduled his medication times to coincide with when you'd call. How she'd tell you he was sleeping, he was too tired. Maybe try tomorrow. Ariadne's throat tightened. She'd blamed herself for not fighting harder, for accepting Miranda's gatekeeping as legitimate concern for Sebastian's health. I should have. You trusted her because your father married her. Luca was close enough now that she could smell earth and wine on him, the scent of the vineyard itself. That's not a character flaw, Ariadne. That's being a decent human being. She weaponized it. The validation, being seen, being understood, hit her harder than expected. Her eyes burned. I'm not a fighter, she said quietly. I'm not built like Miranda. I don't know how to be ruthless.
No.
Luca reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so tender it made her heart stutter. You're built like your father. You understand the long game. You appreciate complexity. You know that the best wines aren't made by force. They're made by patience and perfect timing. His hand lingered near her face, and Ariadne realized with a jolt that the crush she'd nursed for 2 years wasn't one-sided. She could see it in the way he looked at her, like she was something precious he'd been afraid to touch. Luca, the sound of tires on gravel cut through the moment. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Ariadne moved to the window, her pulse racing for entirely different reasons now. A black Mercedes SUV, Miranda's car, pulled up in front of the shed. Shit, Ariadne breathed. What is she doing here? Nothing good. Luca was already gathering the documents, his movements quick and efficient. Where do you want these?
Cellar.
Back behind the stone.
Now.
He moved fast, taking the ledger and codicil downstairs while Ariadne shoved the photograph into her jacket pocket and tried to calm her racing heart. By the time Miranda's heels clicked on the stone path outside, the desk looked like it had when Ariadne arrived, cluttered but innocent, just an old man's abandoned workspace. Luca emerged from the cellar as Miranda appeared in the doorway. She looked immaculate as always, cream silk blouse, tailored slacks, her blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon. But her eyes were cold, assessing, suspicious. Ariadne, I didn't expect to find you here so late. Her gaze slid to Luca. Or with company. Just dropping off some of her things from the office, Luca said evenly. Ms. Deckard. Miranda's smile was sharp as a blade. How thoughtful. Though I believe I asked facilities management to handle that, not viticulture. It was a dismissal and a warning. Luca met Ariadne's eyes for a brief second. A question. Thank you, Luca, Ariadne said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline screaming through her system. I appreciate it. He nodded and left, but not before Miranda tracked his exit with the kind of attention she usually reserved for quarterly reports. You should be careful with the staff, Miranda said once they were alone. Familiarity breeds all sorts of unfortunate complications. Did you need something? Ariadne asked, refusing to take the bait. Miranda moved into the shed, her heels loud on the wooden floor. She looked around with barely concealed distaste, at the wine crates, the dusty bottles, the evidence of Sebastian's obsessions. I wanted to discuss the shed, actually. I've had an appraiser look at the property, and the land itself has some value. Not much, given the soil quality and distance from the main facilities, but perhaps 30,000. I'm prepared to offer you 50 to simplify things. Ariadne's blood went cold. Simplify what things? Estate management. Having a separate parcel under different ownership creates complications for zoning, insurance, access rights. It would be cleaner if everything was consolidated. Miranda's tone was reasonable, practical. The tone of someone who always got what she wanted. 50,000 for this old building, and the dirt around it is generous, Ariadne. You could use that money to start fresh somewhere else. Start fresh. Translation. Go away. The will specifically left me this property, Ariadne said carefully. All contents therein. Why would I sell it? Sentimentality. Doesn't pay rent, darling. Miranda picked up a bottle from the nearest crate, an 1891 Bordeaux that was probably worth $15,000, and examined it like it was a garage sale curiosity. And these old bottles. Sebastian convinced himself they were treasures, but really, they're just a liability. Old wine turns to vinegar. It's the nature of things. She set the bottle down carelessly, and Ariadne had to physically restrain herself from lunging forward to catch it. I'll think about it, Ariadne said through clenched teeth. Don't think too long. The offer expires in 72 hours. Miranda moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Ariadne? I'll need you out of the main house by this weekend. Not the end of the month. I'm having renovations done. Your room is being converted to a home office. The casual cruelty of it, the erasure of even her physical space, was breathtaking. This weekend is in 3 days. Then I suggest you start packing. Miranda's smile was poison sweet. Unless you'd prefer to move into this charming little shed? I'm sure you and the spiders would get along wonderfully. She left in a cloud of expensive perfume and victory. Ariadne stood alone in her father's sanctuary, shaking with rage, so pure it felt like lightning in her veins. Miranda wanted this property. Specifically, urgently, enough to offer money and accelerate the timeline for removing Ariadne from the estate entirely, which meant Miranda knew something. Maybe not about Clearwater Holdings or the codicil, but something about this shed, this land, that made her nervous. Ariadne pulled out her phone and texted Jamie, *change of plans. I need you here tonight. And I need the name of the best water rights attorney in California. The response came instantly. Oh hell yes. Now we're talking. Be there in 45 minutes. Then she texted Luca. Are you still on the property? Yeah. My cottage. What's wrong? Come back to the shed. And bring any paperwork you have on the vineyard's water contracts. We need to figure out exactly what I own. On my way. Ariadne looked around the shed, her inheritance, her weapon, and felt something shift inside her. The old Ariadne had died 3 days ago in that lawyer's office. This Ariadne wasn't going anywhere. And just like that, the game changes. What do you think Miranda knows? And are you Team Ariadne all the way? Let me know in the comments. I love reading your theories. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is your reminder. Hit that button because this story is about to get wild. Jamie arrived first, pulling up in her Tesla with a bottle of Dom Perignon and the kind of predatory smile she usually reserved for opposing counsel. Show me everything, she said, barely through the door. Ariadne did. 20 minutes later, Jamie sat at the desk with the codicil in one hand and her phone in the other, already on a call with someone named Richard who apparently specialized in California water law and owed her a favor. Yeah, it's airtight, she was saying. Notarized, filed with the county. Predates the will by over a decade. No, she has no idea. She just triggered it 3 days ago.
A pause.
Tomorrow morning. Your office. Bill me whatever you want. This one's personal. She hung up and looked at Ariadne with something like awe. Your father was a genius. An absolute genius. Miranda doesn't have a legal leg to stand on. But she knows something, Ariadne insisted. Why else would she want this property so badly? Maybe she's just thorough, Jamie suggested. Wants all the pieces. Or, Lucas said from the doorway, making them both jump, she's finally looking at the water contracts. He came in carrying a laptop and a stack of files. I pulled everything I could access from the agricultural management system. The contracts with Clearwater Holdings go back 40 years, but they're listed under Legacy Infrastructure Auto-Renew. No one's actually examined them in at least a decade. Until now.
Ariadne asked.
Until last week. Someone from Miranda's office requested the full contract history. I saw the access logs. Jamie swore softly. She's looking for vulnerabilities. She doesn't know about the codicil yet, but she's smart enough to realize water rights matter. So we're racing her, Ariadne said.
No.
Jamie's smile turned sharp. We're already ahead. She's looking for problems. We're holding the solution and the detonator. She stood, all business now. Here's what happens next. Tomorrow, you meet with Richard Chen. He files a formal notice of ownership transfer for this property from the family trust to Clearwater Holdings, which triggers your right of first refusal on all water contracts. Miranda will get the notification by end of business. And then, Ariadne's heart was racing. Then she realizes she doesn't own what she thought she owned. And she comes to you. Luca moved closer to Ariadne, his presence solid and reassuring. You don't have to destroy the vineyard to win this. You just have to make her negotiate from a position of weakness instead of strength. Your father didn't build you a bomb, Jamie added. He built you leverage. Now we use it. Ariadne looked between them, her best friend, fierce and loyal. Luca, whose hand had somehow found hers in the dim light of the shed. Her father's letter was still in her pocket, pressed against her heart. Okay, she said. Let's make her beg. We're at the tipping point now. What do you think happens when Miranda finds out? Drop your predictions below. Richard Chen's office occupied the top floor of a glass tower in San Francisco with views of the bay that probably cost more than most people's houses. He was 50, sharp-eyed, and moved through legal documents like a conductor reading sheet music. This, he said, tapping the codicil, is beautiful work. Whoever drafted this understood water law better than most specialists. He looked up at Ariadne. Your father didn't do this alone. He had help from someone very, very good. Does it matter? Jamie asked. Only if we need to defend it. Which we won't, because it's bulletproof. Richard pulled up something on his computer. I've already filed the ownership transfer with the county. The property deed moved from the Von Trapp Family Trust to Clearwater Holdings LLC as of 9 o'clock this morning. Ariadne Corleone, as sole shareholder, now owns the entity that controls water access to. He scrolled, approximately 400 acres of premium vineyard land. The number hit Ariadne like a physical force. 400 acres. The entire production operation. How long before Miranda knows? She asked. I had my paralegal send official notification to her attorney an hour ago. So I'd say, his desk phone buzzed. His assistant's voice came through. Mr. Chen, I have a Miranda Deckard on line 1. She says it's urgent. Richard's smile was wolfish. Right on schedule. He looked at Ariadne. Wanna listen? She nodded, her mouth dry. He put the call on speaker. Richard Chen. Mr. Chen. Miranda's voice was ice over steel. I've just received a very confusing notification about a property transfer involving my late husband's estate. I assume there's been some kind of filing error. No error, Miss Deckard. The transfer was executed according to a codicil attached to the Articles of Incorporation of Clearwater Holdings, dated 15 years ago. All properly notarized and filed. Silence. Long enough that Ariadne wondered if Miranda had hung up. Then, I want to speak to Ariadne. My client isn't available at the moment. Your client. The words dripped venom. Ariadne hired you? Ms. Corleone retained my services yesterday, yes. Tell her to call me.
Today.
Or I'll have my attorneys contest this entire Contest on what grounds? Richard's voice went sharp, professional. The codicil predates your marriage to Sebastian Von Trapp by 5 years. It's tied to corporate documents, not the estate. And the trigger clause activated automatically when your will reading distributed less than 50% of the estate value to Ms. Corleone. Which, according to public filings, it did. Another silence. How much does she want? Miranda asked quietly. Richard looked at Ariadne, eyebrows raised. She shook her head. My client hasn't authorized me to discuss terms. I suggest you reach out to her directly when she's ready to negotiate. The vineyard can't operate without that water.
I'm aware.
This is extortion. This is estate planning, Ms. Deckard. Your late husband's estate planning, specifically. Have a good day. He disconnected. Jamie let out a whoop of triumph. Oh my God, did you hear her voice? She's terrified. But Ariadne felt sick. The reality of what she'd just done, what her father had built for her to do, settled over her like a weight. She's right, she said quietly. Without water, the vineyard dies. The vines, the production, everything. It's not just Miranda who suffers. It's every worker, every family that depends on those jobs. Which is why you negotiate, Richard said gently. You have the leverage now. You decide the terms. You could demand shared ownership, management changes, a real inheritance, whatever you want. I want my father's wishes honored, Ariadne said. But he built a company, Richard. He employed people. Those vines are 40 years old. Some of them he planted himself. I can't just, her phone rang. Miranda. Ariadne stared at it, her heart hammering. You don't have to answer, Jamie said. But she did. Because this was the moment everything changed. She picked up. Hello, Miranda. You vindictive little bitch. The words were quiet, shaking with rage. You have no idea what you've done. I know exactly what I've done. The same thing you did. I executed my inheritance. Your inheritance was a shed full of rotting wood and worthless bottles. And yet you offered me $50,000 for it. Why, Miranda? If it's so worthless, why do you want it so badly? Silence. I'm prepared to be reasonable, Miranda said finally, her voice controlled again. Calculated. We can negotiate an arrangement that works for both of us. You clearly want more than your father left you. Name your price. This isn't about money. Everything is about money, darling. Your father knew that. I know that. And deep down, so do you. My father knew about loyalty, Ariadne shot back. About legacy. About protecting the things that matter from people who only see price tags. He was a sentimental old man who let nostalgia cloud his business judgment. I made him profitable. I made him relevant.
And you
want to destroy that because you're angry you got left out? The unfairness of it, the sheer audacity, made Ariadne's vision blur. You manipulated him when he was dying. You kept me away from him. You made him think I didn't care enough to visit. I protected him from your constant emotional neediness. Miranda's voice rose. Every time you visited, you'd cry and make him feel guilty about the business, about his choices, about marrying me. You were exhausting him, Ariadne. I saved his final months from being consumed by your sentiment and weakness. You erased me from his will. He erased you. I just made sure the paperwork reflected his actual wishes instead of his morphine-induced delusions. Ariadne closed her eyes. I'll be in touch about the water contracts. Through my attorney. Ariadne, wait. She hung up. The silence in the office was deafening. Okay, Jamie said finally. I officially hate her. Like, professionally hate her. Richard was watching Ariadne carefully. You all right?
No.
Ariadne's hands were shaking. But I will be. She looked at him. How long can the vineyard operate without new water contracts? 8 weeks, according to current usage rates. Less if it's a hot summer. So, I have 8 weeks to decide what kind of person I want to be. You have 8 weeks of leverage, Jamie corrected. Use it. Ariadne drove back to the vineyard in a daze, Jamie following in her own car. They'd planned to stay at Luca's cottage, neutral territory, since the main house was now hostile ground. But when they pulled up to the shed to collect Ariadne's things, Luca was already there, pacing in front of the door. "We have a problem," he said. Ariadne's stomach dropped. "What now?" "Miranda called an emergency staff meeting an hour ago. She told everyone that you're trying to sabotage the vineyard out of spite, that you're holding the water rights hostage to extort money from the business." He ran a hand through his hair, that gesture of stress she'd come to recognize. "Half the staff thinks you're a hero standing up to her. The other half thinks you're going to put them out of work."
Jesus, Jamie mutered.
"She's turning them against you," Luca said, "making this a referendum on whether you care about the vineyard or just yourself." Ariadne felt the ground shifting under her feet again. She hadn't considered this, that Miranda would weaponize the staff, the people who'd worked with her father, who'd known Ariadne since she was a child. "What did you say?" she asked Luca. "In the meeting?" He met her eyes. "I said that Sebastian von Trapp was the smartest man I ever met. And if he built in protections for his daughter, he had good reason. I said people should wait to hear your side before choosing sides. And Miranda fired me." The words hit like a slap. "What?" "Effective immediately. Insubordination and conflict of interest." His smile was bitter. "Apparently being friendly with you makes me a security risk." "Luca, I'm so sorry, don't be." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "I meant what I said. Your father was brilliant, and he trusted you with this for a reason." His hand found hers, warm and solid. "I trust you too." The moment stretched between them, charged with everything unspoken. Jamie cleared her throat. "So, I'm gonna go check on something over there. Anywhere that's not here." She disappeared around the side of the shed with exaggerated casualness. Luca's thumb traced circles on Ariadne's palm. "You're not alone in this. You know that, right? You lost your job because of me. I lost my job because Miranda is terrified. That means you're winning." "It doesn't feel like winning." "It will." He lifted his free hand to her face, the gesture achingly gentle. "When this is over and you've taken back what's yours, it will feel like winning. Until then, it just feels like war." "I don't know how to fight a war." "Yes, you do. You're already doing it." He leaned in, close enough that she could feel his breath. "You're just fighting it like your father, with strategy and patience instead of brute force." "Luca," he kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, a question. But when she kissed him back, it deepened into something that felt like falling and flying at the same time. His hands cradled her face like she was precious, and she let herself fall into it. The warmth, the connection, the feeling of being seen and wanted and trusted. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "I've wanted to do that for 2 years, Luca admitted. "I know." Ariadne smiled despite everything. "I've wanted you to." "Then why didn't you?" "Because you worked for the family business. Because Miranda would have made it impossible. Because I was afraid of wanting something I couldn't have." She touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. "I'm tired of being afraid." "Good." He kissed her again, quick and fierce. "Because what comes next is going to take courage." Jamie's voice drifted from around the shed. "Are you two done making out?" "Because I found something you need to see." They broke apart, grinning like guilty teenagers. Jamie emerged holding a piece of paper, her expression grim. "This was taped to the back door of the shed. Someone left it while we were in the city." Ariadne took it. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the message written in careful block letters. Asterisk, she knows about the ledger. Check the cellar. A friend, asterisk, Ariadne's blood went cold. They ran. The cellar door was open, the trapdoor she'd carefully closed that morning now gaping like a wound. She scrambled down the stairs, Luca right behind her. The stone was pulled out, the hiding place exposed. Empty. The ledger was gone. And in its place, a note in Miranda's elegant handwriting. Asterisk, did you really think you were the only one Sebastian confided in? We need to talk.
Tomorrow.
The main house. Come alone, or I burn everything. Asterisk. Oh.
My God.
What does Miranda know? And who is the friend who warned Ariadne? Asterisk, asterisk, tell me your theories in the comments. I'm reading every single one. And if this twist just made your jaw drop, make sure you're subscribed. Hashtag part 6. Darkest hour, Ariadne didn't sleep. She sat in Luca's cottage with Jamie and Richard on a conference call until 3 in the morning, strategizing, planning, trying to figure out how Miranda had known about the ledger and what she planned to do with it. The ledger proves intent, Richard said, his voice tinny through the phone. It shows Sebastian's 40-year plan to protect the water rights through a separate entity. But it doesn't invalidate the codicil. That document is already filed and legal. So Miranda has evidence that Sebastian planned this, Jamie said. So what? That helps us. Unless she uses it to prove undue influence, Richard countered. If she can argue that Sebastian was manipulating estate documents to disinherit his legal spouse, she could challenge the corporate structure itself. Ariadne's head throbbed. That would take years of litigation. Years the vineyard doesn't have without water, Lucas said quietly. They'd ended the call with no clear answers, only the certainty that Ariadne had to face Miranda in the morning. The main house looked the same as it always had, a sprawling California mission-style estate with terracotta tiles and bougainvillea climbing the walls. Ariadne had grown up here. Every window held a memory. Every room contained ghosts. Now it felt like enemy territory. Miranda answered the door herself, which was unusual. She looked immaculate despite the early hour, dressed in a black silk blouse and tailored pants. Her expression was unreadable. You came alone, she observed. You asked me to. I told you to. There's a difference. Miranda stepped aside.
Come in.
The house smelled like coffee and the lavender cleaning products the housekeeper used. Nothing had changed in the 3 days since Ariadne had been ordered out. Her absence had left no mark. Miranda led her to Sebastian's study, the room where he'd worked when he was home, where Ariadne used to sit on the floor as a child and color while he made phone calls. Now it was Miranda's domain, the desk cleared of Sebastian's comfortable clutter and replaced with her own stark efficiency. The ledger sat in the center of the desk. Sit, Miranda said. Ariadne remained standing. How did you get that? I had someone retrieve it while you were in San Francisco yesterday. The shed's locks are 40 years old, darling. Not exactly Fort Knox. Miranda sat behind the desk, her hands folded over the ledger like a throne. I've read it cover to cover. Fascinating bedtime reading. Then you know that my father planned this. That he wanted me protected. I know that your father spent 40 years hiding assets from the IRS, his business partners, and eventually from me. Miranda's smile was cold. Do you have any idea how many laws he broke creating this little shell game? The tax implications alone could trigger a federal investigation. Ariadne's stomach dropped. You wouldn't. Why not? If this goes public, Clearwater Holdings gets tied up in litigation for a decade. The water rights become contested. And in the meantime, I make alternative arrangements for the vineyard's water supply. There are other aquifers, other contracts. It would be expensive, but doable. You destroy my father's legacy to spite me. I'd protect the business from a vengeful child playing with legal weapons she doesn't understand. Miranda leaned forward. You think you're fighting for justice, Ariadne? You're fighting for revenge. And revenge is expensive.
Messy.
It destroys everything it touches. What do you want? I want you to sell me Clearwater Holdings.
Today.
I'll pay you $5 million, far more than it's worth in any legitimate valuation. You walk away rich. I keep the vineyard running, and we never speak to each other again. $5 million. Enough to start over anywhere, build any life she wanted. And if I say no... Miranda opened a folder on her desk. Then I release these documents to the press. Photos of the ledger, showing Sebastian's hidden company. Copies of the codicil, demonstrating how he manipulated corporate law to disinherit his legal spouse. And this. She slid a document across the desk, a sworn affidavit from Dr. Harrison, Sebastian's physician, stating that your father's mental competency was questionable in the final year of his life. Ariadne picked up the affidavit with shaking hands. It was dated 3 weeks ago, notarized and official. He was competent, she whispered. The codicil was written 15 years ago, but the ledger entries continue right up until 6 months before his death. Rambling notes about protecting you, about not trusting me, about secret plans. Miranda's voice was almost sympathetic. In the hands of the right attorney, this looks like paranoid delusion, not strategic planning. Especially combined with Dr. Harrison's testimony about the medication Sebastian was on, the pain, the confusion. You're lying. Dad was clear-headed. For moments. Hours sometimes.
But not always, Ariadne. You know that.
You saw it in those final months when I let you visit. Miranda stood, moving around the desk. I don't want to destroy your father's reputation. I don't want his obituary rewritten as brilliant vintner succumbs to paranoid dementia. But I will if you force me to. The threat hung between them like smoke. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a choice. $5 million and your father's legacy remains intact. Or a legal war that exposes every private moment of his decline, humiliates his memory, and ultimately gets you nothing because Clearwater Holdings will be frozen in probate until you're 50. Ariadne's mind raced. Richard could fight this. Jamie would fight this. But Miranda was right about one thing. The publicity would be devastating. Every news outlet would run stories about Sebastian's mental state, his hidden companies, the family drama. The vineyard's reputation would suffer. Stock prices would fall. I need time to think, Ariadne said. You have until 5 o'clock today. After that, I hold a press conference. Miranda returned to her seat, dismissing Ariadne with her body language. Oh, and one more thing. Stop seeing Luca Babbitt. Ariadne's head snapped up. Excuse me? He's been feeding you information, encouraging this little rebellion. It's inappropriate and it clouds your judgment. Miranda's smile turned sharp. I have security footage of him accessing restricted files, removing documents from company property. If you pursue this legal action, I'll have him arrested for corporate espionage and theft. He was helping me understand my own inheritance. He was stealing proprietary business information to assist in your extortion scheme. That's how it will look in court. That's how it will look when he's unemployed and unemployable in this industry forever. The air left Ariadne's lungs. Miranda had thought of everything. Every move, every countermove. She'd turned Ariadne's victory into a weapon against everyone she cared about. You're a monster, Ariadne whispered. I'm a businesswoman who protects what's mine. There's a difference. Miranda's expression didn't change. 5 o'clock, Ariadne. Save your father's reputation, take the money and walk away. Or lose everything trying to win a war you were never equipped to fight. Ariadne stumbled out of the house in a daze. Jamie was waiting in the car, took one look at her face, and pulled her into a fierce hug. What happened? Ariadne told her everything. Jamie's expression went from shock to rage to calculation. She's bluffing.
She has to be.
Richard can. She has a doctor's sworn statement about Dad's mental state. She has 40 years of ledger entries that could be interpreted as paranoia. And she'll destroy Dad's reputation, the vineyard's reputation, everything. Ariadne's voice cracked. And she'll have Luca arrested. Luca knew the risks. I didn't. I didn't know this would happen.
I didn't know she'd.
Ariadne couldn't finish the sentence. The weight of it all, her father's legacy hanging by a thread, Luca's future in jeopardy, the vineyard caught in. The crossfire, pressed down until she couldn't breathe. We can fight this, Jamie insisted. We can. How? Even if we win eventually, what gets destroyed in the process? My father's memory? Luca's career? The vineyard itself? Ariadne pressed her hands to her face. Maybe she's right. Maybe I'm not equipped for this. Don't you dare. Jamie grabbed her shoulders. Don't you dare let her make you small again. I'm not being small. I'm being realistic. She's better at this than I am. She's always been better at this. Her phone buzzed. A text from Luca. How did it go? Ariadne stared at the message, thinking about security footage and arrest warrants and a future where Luca paid the price for her vendetta. She typed back, we need to talk. But not now. I need space to think. His response came immediately. Whatever you need. I'm here. But that was the problem. He was here, in the blast radius, and she'd put him there. Jamie drove her back to the shed in silence. When they arrived, Ariadne sat in the passenger seat, unable to make herself move. What are you going to do? Jamie asked quietly. I don't know. Yes, you do. You're thinking about taking the money. Ariadne closed her eyes. If I take it, Dad's reputation stays clean. Lucas stays safe. The vineyard keeps operating. Everyone wins except me. Everyone wins except you, Jamie echoed. And that's exactly what Miranda's counting on. She knows you'll sacrifice yourself to protect everyone else. It's what you've always done. Because it's the right thing, is it? Is it right to let her win through intimidation and lies? Is it right to teach her that threatening the people you love is an effective strategy? Jamie's voice went fierce. Your father didn't build you that codicil so you could sell it for hush money, Ariadne. He built it so you could fight back. But at what cost? At whatever cost it takes to honor his real wishes. Not the ones Miranda forced him to sign, but the ones he spent 15 years planning and protecting. Jamie took her hand. I know you're scared, but you're also stronger than you think. And you're not alone. Ariadne wanted to believe her. But sitting there in the shadow of her father's shed, with Miranda's ultimatum ticking down and everything she loved hanging in the balance, strength felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. She had until 5 o'clock to decide what kind of person she was going to be. And she had absolutely no idea what the right answer was. This is the moment where everything hangs in the balance. What would you do in Ariadne's position? Fight or fold? Let me know in the comments, because I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. And if you're invested in seeing how this resolves, hit that subscribe button. Ariadne sat alone in the shed as the afternoon light slanted through the dusty windows. 4 o'clock. 1 hour until Miranda's deadline. Jamie had gone back to the city to consult with Richard about options. Legal Hail Marys that probably wouldn't work, but had to be explored. Ariadne had asked for space to think, which really meant space to fall apart without witnesses. She'd been staring at the wine collection for the past hour, at the bottles her father had spent a lifetime gathering. Each one a story. Each one a moment captured in glass. Her phone showed 15 missed calls. Jamie. Richard.
Luca.
She couldn't face any of them. Couldn't face explaining that she was going to surrender, that Miranda had won, that the ledger and the codicil and her father's brilliant plan had all been for nothing because Ariadne wasn't strong enough to see it through. $5 million. A fresh start. And the certain knowledge that she'd betrayed everything her father had trusted her to protect. She was reaching for her phone to call Miranda and accept the offer when she heard it. A sound from the cellar. Ariadne froze. She was alone. The door was locked. No one should be. Hello, she called out, her voice shaking. Footsteps on the wooden stairs. A woman emerged from the cellar, maybe 65, with silver hair pulled back in a practical bun and dirt under her fingernails. She wore gardening clothes and carried a leather satchel. Ariadne recognized her immediately. Mrs. Chun, she breathed. Eleanor Chun had been Sebastian's secretary for 30 years, retiring 5 years ago when arthritis made typing too painful. Ariadne remembered her from childhood, the kind woman who'd kept butterscotch candies in her desk drawer and always remembered to ask about school. Hello, sweetheart, Eleanor said gently. I'm sorry for sneaking in. I still have the old key your father gave me. She held up a tarnished brass key. I was the one who left you the warning yesterday. You knew about the ledger? I knew about everything, dear. I typed most of those documents. Eleanor set the satchel on the desk. Your father and I worked on the Clearwater holding structure for 2 years. He trusted me completely. Ariadne's throat tightened. Then you know Miranda stole the ledger. You know she has a doctor's statement saying Dad wasn't competent. Dr. Harrison is a liar and a coward, Eleanor said flatly. He signed that affidavit because Miranda promised him a position on the board of the new medical center she's funding. I know because I still have coffee with his nurse, and she was disgusted enough to tell me. A flicker of something, hope, maybe, sparked in Ariadne's chest. But even if he's lying, how do we prove it? Eleanor opened the satchel. Your father knew Miranda would try something like this. He knew she'd attack his competency, his motives, his love for you. She pulled out a small wooden box. So, he left insurance. Inside the box was a USB drive and a letter. What is this? Video recordings. Your father made them over the course of 3 years, updating them regularly. They're dated, time-stamped, and witnessed by me and his attorney, not the one who drafted the will under Miranda's influence, but the one who helped him create Clearwater Holdings. Eleanor's eyes were fierce. 47 videos of a completely lucid, mentally competent Sebastian Von Trapp explaining exactly why he created the codicil, what he feared Miranda would do, and what he wanted for you. Ariadne's hands shook as she picked up the USB drive. He recorded the last one 6 months before he died. Eleanor continued. I was there. He was weak, yes. In pain, yes. But sharp as ever. He knew exactly what he was doing. Why didn't you come forward before? Because your father's instructions were clear. Only give these to Ariadne if Miranda tries to challenge her competency or his. He wanted you to have the chance to decide for yourself how to handle this. Not to be rescued, but to be armed. Eleanor touched Ariadne's hand. He believed in you. Sweetheart. He knew you were stronger than you thought. The tears came then hot and fast. Ariadne pressed her hand to her mouth, trying to hold back the sob building in her chest. I don't feel strong, she whispered. No one does when they're in the middle of the battle. But you've already come so far. You found the codicil. You activated the clause. You faced Miranda without backing down. Eleanor's voice was firm, loving. Your father always said you had your mother's heart, brave and true. He was counting on that. Ariadne looked at the USB drive, then at the letter. Her father's handwriting, familiar as her own heartbeat. She opened it. My dearest Ariadne, if Eleanor is giving you this, it means I was right about Miranda. I wish I'd been wrong. I wish the woman I married had been the woman she pretended to be. But love makes fools of us all, and I was a very old fool. These recordings are your shield. They prove that I knew exactly what I was doing when I created Clearwater Holdings. They prove that my love for you is clear-eyed and intentional, not sentiment or delusion. But evidence isn't enough, my darling. You need to want to fight. You need to believe you deserve to win. I know Miranda has made you feel small. I know I failed to protect you from that while I was alive. I was weak when it mattered most, and I'm sorry. But you are not small. You are not sentimental or weak or any of the things she's called you. You are my daughter. You are your mother's daughter. And you carry inside you a strength that Miranda will never understand because she's never loved anything more than she loves winning. Fight for the vineyard. Yes. Fight for your inheritance. But mostly fight for yourself. Fight for the right to take up space in your own life. Fight for the truth. And remember, the best revenge is living well and living honestly. I love you more than words can say. Dad. Ariadne clutched the letter, her vision blurring. The door to the shed burst open. Lucas stood in the doorway, breathing hard like he'd been running. His eyes found hers immediately. Don't do it, he said. What? Don't take Miranda's deal. Don't sell her the company. Jamie called me, told me what happened. He crossed to her in 3 strides. Whatever she threatened, whatever she said, we'll find another way. Luca, I don't care if she has me arrested. I don't care about the job or the industry reputation or any of it. His hands framed her face, intense and desperate. I care about you not spending the rest of your life wondering if you gave up too soon. I'm not giving up, Ariadne said, and realized as she said it that it was true. Not anymore. She showed him the USB drive, explained about Eleanor and the videos. Watched relief and fierce pride flood his expression. Your father was a genius, he said. He was terrified. Eleanor corrected gently. But fear made him careful.
Precise.
He built you a weapon, Ariadne. Now you need to use it. Ariadne looked between them. Eleanor, who'd kept her father's secrets for years. Luca, who'd risked everything to stand with her. Jamie and Richard, fighting for her in the city. She wasn't alone. She'd never been alone. What time is it? She asked. Luca checked his phone. 4:45. 15 minutes until Miranda's deadline. Ariadne pulled out her phone and called her stepmother. Miranda answered on the first ring. Have you made your decision?
I have.
I'm not selling you Clearwater Holdings. Not for $5 million. Not for $50 million. Not ever. Silence. Then Miranda's voice, cold and sharp. Then I'll destroy your father's reputation. I'll release everything. No, you won't. Because I have 47 videos of my father, recorded over 3 years, explaining in perfect, lucid detail exactly why he created the codicil and what he thought of you. Ariadne's voice was steady now, certain. They're dated, time-stamped, witnessed by his longtime secretary and his attorney. They prove beyond any doubt that Sebastian Von Trapp was completely competent and that everything he did was intentional. Another silence, longer this time. You're bluffing. Try me. Hold your press conference. Release your doctor's statement. And I'll release 47 videos of my father calling you a manipulative, gold-digging liar who isolated him from his daughter and manipulated him on his deathbed. Ariadne's heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. Let's see whose reputation survives that, Miranda. You wouldn't dare. You have no idea what I'd dare. You've spent 10 years underestimating me. That ends now. Ariadne took a breath. Here's my offer. You have 48 hours to negotiate a settlement that gives me 51% ownership of Von Trapp Vineyards and restores my position as my father's heir. In exchange, Clearwater Holdings continues to supply water at the current contract rates, and I don't release the videos. You're insane if you think. 48 hours, Miranda. After that, I go public with everything. The videos. The codicil. The fact that you fired the head viticulturist for supporting me. All of it. Ariadne's voice went soft, deadly. You taught me that everything is about leverage. Congratulations. I'm a fast learner. She hung up. The silence in the shed was absolute. Then Luca laughed, a sound of pure, disbelieving joy. Oh my God. I just declared war. Ariadne finished. Her hands started shaking now, adrenaline hitting in waves. Oh God. I just declared war on Miranda Deckard. You just won, Eleanor corrected, smiling. She'll negotiate. She has no choice. Luca pulled Ariadne into his arms, and she let herself collapse against him, her heart racing, her mind spinning. I'm terrified, she admitted against his chest. Good. That means you're doing it right. He pulled back enough to look at her, his eyes fierce and proud, and full of something that made her breath catch. I'm so damn proud of you. I couldn't have done this without. He kissed her, deep and claiming and full of promise. When they broke apart, they were both breathless. We're going to win this, he said. Together. Ariadne looked around the shed, her father's sanctuary, her inheritance, her weapon. At Eleanor, still smiling with quiet satisfaction. At the USB drive that held her father's voice, his love, his faith in her. At Luca, who'd chosen her over safety. Yeah, she said, feeling something fierce and bright unfurling in her chest. We are. The tide just turned. What do you think Miranda does next? Asterisk, asterisk, drop your predictions in the comments, and if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. Miranda's lawyers requested a meeting within 12 hours. They gathered in Richard Chen's conference room. Neutral territory, glass and steel high above the city. On one side, Miranda Deckard, flanked by two attorneys in expensive suits and expressions of barely controlled rage. On the other, Ariadne, with Richard, Jamie, and Eleanor Chen, who'd insisted on attending as a witness. Luca waited outside, barred from the proceedings but present nonetheless. His hand had squeezed Ariadne's before she walked in, a silent promise. I'm here. Miranda looked smaller somehow, though she'd lost none of her polish. The cream suit was impeccable, the hair perfect, but something in her eyes had shifted. Fear, maybe, or calculation. Let's be clear, her lead attorney said, a sharp-faced woman named Patricia Howe. Our client disputes the validity of these alleged recordings. Richard slid a USB drive across the table. Feel free to examine them. We have the originals professionally authenticated by 3 independent digital forensics experts. Chain of custody is documented. The timestamps are verified. Sebastian Von Trapp's voice patterns match existing recordings, confirmed by audio analysis. He smiled thinly. They'll hold up in any court in the country. Patricia took the drive with obvious reluctance. Even so, she continued, the will is legally binding. You can't simply overturn. We're not overturning the will, Jamie interrupted. We're executing the codicil that supersedes it. 2 different legal instruments. The will distributed the estate. The codicil redistributed corporate ownership based on specific triggering conditions. Conditions your client activated when she gave Ariadne less than 50% of the estate value. The codicil could be challenged as fraudulent conveyance. It was created 15 years ago, before my client's father even met Miranda Deckard, Richard said. There's no fraud. There's just excellent estate planning. Patricia's jaw tightened. She leaned over to whisper to Miranda, who listened with an expression like carved ice. Finally, Miranda spoke directly to Ariadne for the first time. What exactly do you want? I told you. 51% ownership of Von Trapp Vineyards. Full restoration of my inheritance rights. A seat on the board with meaningful operational input. Ariadne kept her voice level, professional, and a public acknowledgement that my father's estate planning was intentional and sound. Absolutely not, Miranda said. I've spent 10 years building that business. You've spent 10 years running the business my father built, Ariadne corrected. And you did it well. I'm not disputing that. But you did it by erasing me, manipulating him, and trying to steal what was rightfully mine. I didn't steal anything. The will was legal. The will was coerced. Ariadne's voice went quiet, deadly. I've watched the videos, Miranda. All 47 of them. In the last one, Dad talks about how you controlled his medication schedule. How you told him I didn't want to visit. How you convinced him I was only interested in his money. Miranda's face paled. He knew you were lying, Ariadne continued. But he was too weak to fight you. Too sick to challenge you.
So, he let you think you'd won.
And he trusted that I'd find the truth after he was gone. He was paranoid, he was right. Ariadne leaned forward. About everything.
About you.
About what you'd do. About needing to protect me from you. The silence stretched like broken glass. Eleanor spoke for the first time, her voice gentle but implacable. I was there, Miss Deckard. I watched you isolate Sebastian from everyone who loved him. I watched you rewrite his will under the guise of protecting him from stress. I documented everything because he asked me to. She looked at Ariadne. Your father's last words to me were, make sure she knows I loved her. Make sure she fights. Ariadne's throat closed. She hadn't known that. Eleanor had saved it for this moment, this confrontation. Miranda's composure finally cracked. He loved me too. He chose me. He married me. He did. Ariadne agreed quietly. And maybe part of him did love you once. But you killed that love when you made him choose between you and me. When you made his final months a isolation cell.
She paused.
The sad thing is, you could have had both. The business and his respect. If you'd just let him love his daughter. Something flickered across Miranda's face. Grief, maybe, or the ghost of regret. But it vanished quickly, replaced by the cold calculation Ariadne knew so well. If I agree to your terms, Miranda said slowly, what happens to Clearwater Holdings? It continues to supply water at current rates under a 50-year contract. You get stability. The vineyard survives. Everyone keeps their jobs. And you get control. I get partnership, Ariadne corrected. 51% means I have final say, yes. But it also means you stay on as CEO if you want. You keep running operations. You keep doing what you're good at. She held Miranda's gaze. I don't want to destroy the vineyard, Miranda. I never did. I just want what my father intended me to have. Patricia whispered urgently to Miranda. Calculations happening behind closed doors, risk assessments, cost-benefit analyses. Finally, Miranda looked up. I want the videos destroyed. All copies. No, Richard said immediately. The videos remain in secure storage as insurance against future challenges. If Ms. Deckard honors the settlement, they stay private. If she breaches the agreement or attempts to challenge it, they become public record. That's blackmail. That's protection, Jamie countered. You tried to erase Ariadne once. This ensures you can't try again. Miranda's hands clenched on the table. I want 60% of the company, not 49. No, Ariadne said. 50-50 then. Equal partners. Ariadne considered. 50-50 meant deadlock on major decisions. It meant Miranda could still obstruct, still control. But it also meant compromise. Collaboration. She looked at Richard, who gave a tiny shake of his head. Don't give ground. But Ariadne wasn't Richard. She wasn't even Jamie, who fought battles to win at all costs. She was her father's daughter. And her father had understood that the best victories left room for grace. 50-50, she said, with one condition. I get operational control over the Heritage Wine Program and historical preservation. You get operational control over production and distribution. Tie-breaking votes go to a mutually agreed upon third board member. Who? Ariadne smiled.
Luca Babbitt.
He's reinstated as head viticulturist and given a board seat. He understands both the business and the legacy. He's the bridge. Miranda's expression was unreadable.
But slowly, so slowly, she nodded. Fine.
But I want it in writing that you won't disparage me publicly. No press conferences about how I manipulated your father. The settlement is framed as newly discovered estate planning documents that required restructuring ownership. Agreed, Ariadne said. As long as you make a public statement acknowledging that my father's estate planning was sound and intentional. Anything else? Miranda's voice was acid. Ariadne thought about it. About the years of small cruelties, the calculated erasure, the way Miranda had made her feel invisible in her own home. Yes, she said quietly. I want you to apologize. Not publicly. Not for the lawyers. Just to me. For keeping me from him at the end. The request seemed to shock Miranda more than anything else that had happened. He asked for you, she said finally, her voice barely audible. In those last few days. He kept asking where you were. I told him you were busy. That you'd come tomorrow. Her hands trembled slightly. I thought if I could just keep the business intact, if I could prove I was indispensable, then his love for me would have meant something. It did mean something, Ariadne said. But love isn't ownership, Miranda. You can't earn it by erasing the competition. Miranda's eyes were bright with something. That might have been tears. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry I kept you from him. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. Okay, Ariadne said. Let's write this up. The contracts took 3 hours to draft and another 2 to review. By the time they were signed, notarized, and filed, the sun was setting over San Francisco Bay, painting the sky in shades of gold and fire. Ariadne walked out of that conference room as a 50% owner of Von Trapp Vineyards, with full legal recognition as Sebastian Von Trapp's heir. Luca was waiting in the lobby. He stood when he saw her, his eyes searching her face. Well, she handed him a document. Congratulations, Board Member Babbitt. I hope you're ready to be the tie-breaking vote on a lot of arguments. His eyes widened as he read. Then he laughed and pulled her into his arms, lifting her off the ground and spinning her once before setting her down and kissing her breathless. You did it, he murmured against her lips. You actually did it. We did it, she corrected. All of us. Jamie and Richard emerged from the conference room, both grinning. Eleanor's still in there, Jamie reported. I think she's enjoying watching Miranda squirm through the final documentation. That woman is my hero, Richard said. 40 years of evidence, perfectly preserved. It's beautiful. They went out to celebrate, to a wine bar Ariadne loved, where the sommelier knew her by name and the bottles had stories. They toasted with a 1985 Napa Cabernet, one of the first vintages her father had produced. To Sebastian Von Trapp, Richard said, raising his glass. Who played the longest game and won? To Ariadne, Jamie countered. Who was brave enough to finish it? To family, Luca said quietly, his hand finding Ariadne's under the table. The one we're born into, and the one we choose. Ariadne sipped the wine. Dark cherry and earth and time, complexity earned through patience, and felt something settle in her chest. Peace, maybe. Or just the beginning of it. Justice. Served. How are you feeling right now? Asterisk, tell me in the comments. And if you've been with this story from the beginning, thank you. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Hashtag Part 9. Satisfying conclusion. 3 months later, Ariadne stood in the old stone shed, her shed, and watched the sunset paint the vineyard in shades of amber and gold. The space had been transformed. The wine collection was now properly cataloged and climate-controlled, each bottle documented and preserved. The desk was clean but lived in, covered with maps and soil reports and her father's old notebooks, which she'd been reading cover to cover. The cellar had been reinforced and expanded into a proper tasting room where she hosted intimate events for collectors and historians. But the bones of the place remained the same. Her father's sanctuary. Now hers too. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Come in, she called. Luca entered carrying 2 wine glasses and a bottle she recognized immediately, a 2001 Von Trapp Reserve Cabernet, from the year her father had won his first major award. Thought we should toast properly, he said. First quarterly report came in. Revenue's up 18%, and the Heritage Wine Program has a 6-month waiting list for tours. Ariadne accepted a glass, warmth blooming in her chest. Miranda must be thrilled about the revenue. She actually smiled in the board meeting. I thought Jamie was going to faint. They'd settled into an uneasy but functional partnership, she and Miranda. The older woman ran the business operations with her usual ruthless efficiency, while Ariadne had poured herself into the Heritage program, restoring her father's original vineyard blocks, documenting the estate's history, creating experiences that honored the artistry of winemaking rather than just the profit margin. They rarely spoke outside of board meetings, but they were civil, professional, and slowly, grudgingly, they'd found a rhythm. Miranda had even attended the memorial service Ariadne organized for Sebastian, a private gathering in the vineyard at sunset, where Ariadne had finally scattered her father's ashes among the vines he'd loved. Miranda had stood apart from the small group, but she'd been there. She'd wept quietly, and when it was over, she touched Ariadne's shoulder briefly before walking away. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. How are you doing? Luca asked, reading her expression with the ease of someone who'd learned her tells. Really? Ariadne sipped the wine. Perfect. Balanced. Exactly as she remembered. I'm good. Really good, actually. She smiled. I miss him. Every day. But I feel like I finally understand him. You know? Not just as my dad, but as a person. The risks he took. The fears he had. The way he loved imperfectly, but completely. He'd be so proud of you. I hope so. She set down her glass and moved into Luca's arms, fitting against him like she'd been designed for exactly this spot. I know I'm proud of what we've built. The we encompass so much now. She and Luca had been taking things slowly, building a relationship on the foundation of friendship and trust and shared purpose. He'd moved out of the staff cottage and into a house in town. Boundaries were important, they'd agreed, especially with him on the board. But most nights, he ended up here in the shed, working alongside her or simply keeping her company. It felt right. Easy. Like coming home. I have something for you, Luca said, pulling back slightly. Well, Eleanor has something for you. I'm just the messenger. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a deed to a small parcel of land on the southern edge of the property, where the soil was rocky and wild and perfect for growing unconventional varietals. Eleanor is selling off some of her land holdings, Luca explained. Apparently her father always talked about buying this parcel, but never got around to it. She wants you to have it, for the heritage program, or for whatever you want. Ariadne stared at the deed, her vision blurring. That land bordered the creek, where she'd played as a child, where her father had taught her to identify soil types by touch and smell. I can't accept this. Yes, you can. She insists. Says it's her way of honoring Sebastian's vision. Luca tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. And she suggested that if you planted it, you might want to call that vintage second chances. Ariadne laughed through tears. That woman is dangerous. She's family. Family. The word encompassed so much now. Eleanor, who stopped by weekly with stories about Sebastian and advice about the business. Jamie, who called every Sunday and visited monthly, always bringing expensive champagne and terrible celebrity gossip. Richard, who'd become not just her attorney but her mentor, teaching her to navigate the legal complexities of the industry. And Luca, who'd stood beside her through everything and showed her that love didn't have to be complicated or painful or weaponized. It could be simple, steady, true. Marry me, she said suddenly.
Luca blinked.
What? Marry me. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. When we're ready. I want you to know that's where this is going. For me. You're where this is going. His smile was sunlight breaking through clouds. You're proposing to me? I'm declaring my intentions. There's a difference. Well, in that case. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. I declare my intention to say yes. When you ask properly. With a ring and everything. I'm terrible at romance. You're perfect at it. You just didn't know it yet. He kissed her softly, thoroughly, until the world narrowed to just this. The taste of wine on his lips, the warmth of his hands, the absolute certainty that this was right. When they broke apart, the sun had set completely, leaving the vineyard bathed in twilight. Come on, Ariadne said, taking his hand. Let's go look at our new land. Our land. If I'm declaring intentions, you're stuck with all of them, including co-ownership of weird experimental vineyards. They walked out into the evening, past the main house where lights glowed warmly, past the production facilities humming with late-shift work, into the wild edges of the property where anything seemed possible. Ariadne thought about her father, about the long game he'd played, about the faith he'd had in her to finish what he started. She thought about the will that had tried to erase her and the codicil that had saved her. She thought about water rights and legal battles and the moment she decided to fight instead of flee. But mostly, she thought about the future. About vines waiting to be planted, and wines waiting to be made, and stories waiting to be told. About a love that had surprised her with its steadiness, and a partnership that had surprised her with its joy. About second chances and new beginnings, and the beautiful, complicated work of building a legacy that honored the past while embracing the future. The vineyard stretched out before her in the gathering darkness, acres of possibility and promise. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Ariadne Corleone felt exactly where she belonged. Home. And there it is, the ending Ariadne deserved, the love she earned, and the legacy she fought for. What was your favorite moment from this story? Drop a comment and let me know. And if this story moved you, inspired you, or just made you believe in justice and second chances, do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for reading. And remember, sometimes the best inheritance isn't what's written in a will. It's the courage to fight for what's rightfully yours. Asterisk, asterisk until the next story. Take care of yourselves. And subscribe if you haven't already. Sebastian's legacy lives on. And true love won the day. What did you think? Did the story deliver on all the promises? I'd love to hear your feedback.